You're listening to Twins Takes, the Minnesota Twins podcast.
Play ball!
And welcome into Twins Takes. I'm Twins Central. I'm not joined by Twins Insider, Falvey's Mattress, or Troy today, but I am joined by Cody Pirkl. Cody, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I'm not too mad, but I am disappointed.
Yeah, we're already at that stage where you kind of just expect the bad things to happen, even despite the good start. Cody, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe how you became a Twins fan and just what your general thoughts are on the team this year?
I've been a Twins fan my whole life, but I got kind of more involved in the social media part of it. And I think it was 2019, I reached out to be a Twins daily writer. And I think it was immediately after the Max Kepler 3 home run game off of Trevor Bauer that was just hilarious to watch, and just decided I wanted to get into the writing sphere and all that kind of stuff. So been more involved the last 6-7 years, I would say. But yeah, I guess I definitely have the reputation of the negative guy with the Twins. Totally fair. But unfortunately the last few years, that's been kind of the correct outlook to have. But yeah, no, I kind of the same thing this year. A lot of questions with the team, in my opinion, as everybody knows, pretty much everyone holds the same opinions and about the team headed into the year. But even with that hot streak, I've kind of stayed pretty questionable with kind of what I think of them in the last few games. Unfortunately, it's kind of been going in that direction that everyone could have expected headed into the year. So yeah.
Yeah, this series basically showed all the fears that people had coming into the season. They all reared their ugly head. With that, we'll get into the news here.
Breaking news.
Well, I got some bad news for you.
Extra.
Good news, everyone.
It's time for the news.
The news out of this series is unfortunately basically all negative. The Twins were swept in a 3-game weekend set by the Cincinnati Reds. All the games were pretty close. They had late leads in 2 of the 3. I think what we saw here was the difference between a really good major league bullpen. The Reds lead the league in WPA with their relievers, and the Twins most certainly do not have a good bullpen. Just in general, did you have any big takeaways from this 3-game sweep at the hands of the Reds?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that the Twins were doing when they were winning was cashing in on all of those opportunities with runners in scoring position, which they absolutely had to do with the defense and the bullpen that they have. And yeah, the last 3 games, we've just seen, what happens when, it looks more like the last few years with runners in scoring position for this team. The rest of the team is really going to struggle to keep up. It just was kind of back down to earth these last 3 games.
Yeah, and we all knew that some negative regression was due to come. They were so hot there while they were playing really good baseball, but now unfortunately they've fallen back down to earth. Some good news on the minor league side. Royce Lewis began his rehab assignment. He DH'd yesterday, hit a home run, and then he was at third base today. I believe he was only going to play 5 innings, but he homered once again. Do you think that we see Royce Lewis return on this road trip maybe Tuesday? He is eligible to come back. The Twins head to New York to take on the Mets. And if you do think he gets called up, what do you think the corresponding move is? I thought before today it was maybe going to be James Outman, and then Outman had some good moments in Sunday's afternoon's game. I still think that's what they should do, but I do think there's a chance that it's either Kreidler or Tristan Gray off the roster instead.
No, for sure. I guess I'll be interested to see how hard they want to push down the gas to get Royce back and just try and get a spark on offense, especially with him hitting some homers. They could very well call him back and just have him DH. They can get creative with, Josh Bell playing first base. They have some options to do that. They're not all great, but if they decide that's what they want to do, just to have that extra bat in the lineup, I don't think 2 hits today for James Outman is it shouldn't influence things. It really could, I guess. We've seen the Twins hold on to just guys, veterans that they like like way longer than they probably should in the past. And, maybe it was right on the border and those 2 hits saved his job for a little bit longer, but I think that should probably be the move. Kreidler can play the backup center field role and just kind of move around and keep some good defense in the infield too when they need it. That's what I would do, but I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see how they're operating this year.
Yeah, with Falvey gone, we'll see if Zoll has a little bit different strategy on making guys play back-to-back on rehab assignments or not. I personally think that it's going to be Tristan Gray sent out. He is off to a pretty good start, but I just don't know where you're going to find playing time for him with Royce Lewis back. You can play Kreidler at third on the rare day that you want Lewis at DH or just out of the lineup. I think Gray's utility is pretty low with Lewis and Kreidler both here, and I think Kreidler is just a more useful fit for the roster being right-handed. A guy that I know that you're high on, Alan Roden, was injured on a slide. I believe it was Friday night. It's not expected to be serious per Theo Tollefson, but that was unfortunate to see with Alan Roden injured. We should mention that Matt Wallner was scratched today, so maybe an IL stint coming up for Wallner. I don't know. I haven't seen or heard anything more on that. They said they're going to check him out more after the game, but it seems like Roden may be out of the picture if that does happen.
Yeah, it's really funny that I became like the high guy on Alan Roden, because I remember you and me were talking back when they first got him, and I was like, yeah, I don't see it at all. And you were like, well, let's see how he does. And then we were both in kind of the same place, like headed into the off season where it's like, yeah, he might not be too good. Just, wait and see what he does this year. And then they haven't even given him a chance this year. And it's at a point for me where it's like, I don't know. I would like to see that more than anything. However, they have to make that work eventually. It's too bad that he's hurt now, but like you said, he's been like awesome down there. So it might take injuries at the MLB level, but I still would like to see what he can do. He kind of fits the mold that they were saying they wanted going into the year, and then they just like didn't pursue that strategy at all with the speed and defense. But I don't know. He could be at least a role player, and I'd like to see it at some point.
Yeah, I think if Wallner does end up on the IL, hopefully he's fine enough and the call-up is Roden. If it's not Roden, some other guys they could look at. Emmanuel Rodriguez, obviously, is off to a hot start at St. Paul. Eric Wagaman, who's not off to a hot start, could, I guess, be called up and play the corner outfield against left-handed hitters. I hope that's not the move. But I think it's one of those three. If Wallner is hurt, it is worth noting Wallner is off to a putrid start, as everybody knows that has been watching. The attendance this weekend was pretty good. Friday night, 31K. It should be noted that number is quite inflated, as the poll ads did the smart gesture, I guess, of giving away a free ticket to anyone that was at the opening day. They had that power outage, so this was their way of making that up. Then Saturday, 20.1K, and then this afternoon, 19.4. So attendance is up a little bit. Obviously, a weekend series helps, and they were off to a pretty decent start, so maybe they got a few more walk-ups. Now we'll get into this Red Series. Luke Keaschall just continues to scuffle. Left 7 on base Friday and then 1 each of the last 2 days, 9 total. He was just 2 for 14 this series. OPS down into the 500s. He was dropped in the lineup, hit 5th yesterday, 6th today. Are you worried about Keaschall, or do you just think this is a slow start to the season?
Yeah, I think it's a slow start to the season. It seems like he's just kind of like off right now. He's not really lining the ball places. It's always just kind of doinking it to shortstop or just popping it up to, lazy left or center field or whatever. I mean, you're going to hear me complaining about it twice as much because I have him on my fantasy team too. So I've been real disappointed there. So if you kind of see me complaining like extra and you're like, oh, I wonder what that's all about, it's because I have like $20 on the line for this one league. So, but yeah, no, like Keaschall's been such a like difficult watch. Like that Friday night game, they lost because of the error, but I mean, he had 2 like prime opportunities to just do like anything and just couldn't do it. And then of course they finally moved him down in the lineup, and then these last couple of games, it seems like he's still been finding those spots. Yeah, it's hard to watch because he's probably been one of their worst hitters, and he was supposed to be one of their best. So it's just kind of weird start to the season.
Yeah, I think luckily for Keaschall, James Outman exists, or he might be the worst hitter. Obviously, Keaschall's played a lot more than Outman, so his impact negative impact is felt much bigger. I'm also a fellow Keaschall fantasy owner, and I have, $35 on the line. So I'm also pretty upset at him. So both of us, he's costing us money. Maybe we should request a check.
Yes.
Some good news. Bailey Ober this afternoon. Vintage Bailey Ober starts 6.1 innings, 3 hits, just 1 run. That was an unearned run, thanks to James Outman's poor defense in right field. He did walk 4, which is a little unusual for him, but did strike out 10. He got 14 whiffs for 36%. 5 whiffs on 7 swings for the sweeper and 4 whiffs on 9 swings on the fastball. This was his 6th double-digit strikeout game in his career. I know on this podcast, we've all felt that Ober was pretty close to putting together a start like this. I know you're pretty down on Ober. Do you think this means anything, or do you think this was just kind of a, he's going to have some good starts throughout the year?
Yeah, I don't know. He got helped a ton today by the umpire just giving him like 4 inches off the plate, and the Reds for some reason just never challenging. But I mean, he pitched well. Like he's like a really good pitcher. I was like, back in the day when it was him and Joe Ryan kind of establishing themselves, I thought he was going to be like the better pitcher, because he still has like a lot of tricks in his bag and stuff. Like he's got a good arsenal of weapons to go to, and he locates well, but it's just so hard to believe when I think I saw he was like 88.3 on the fastball today. I don't know. It's just so hard to believe that that's just going to stick for the entire year. I mean, I haven't really looked at his whiff rates, but I know this is kind of how he started last year, where it's like, okay, he's getting by. And then it was like June. It was like, man, just get him on the IL. He's giving up 3 home runs every start. I don't know. I'm pretty worried about him for the length of the season, but I mean, if he can keep figuring it out like he has, I'll enjoy it for however long it lasts.
Yeah, I am glad that you mentioned that there was times last season, even with the reduced velocity, that he did put together good stretches. When the velocity first went away, he did maintain success for quite a while. At the end of the season, we kind of saw it drop away. I know all of us on this podcast, we've obviously discussed Ober's velocity at length. We've all kind of given up on having that return. Are you still holding out a little bit of hope, or do you think we just have to accept this is what Ober is and he has to figure out how to pitch effectively with, 88, 89?
Yeah, I think at his age, I'm no professional athlete, but I kind of know how it goes at a certain point where you lose some things physically, and it's like you can kind of keep trying to get them back, but sometimes it's just not possible when you're 30 or whatever. I don't see a whole lot of that coming back after being gone for as long as it has. We're over a year now, and I don't know. It just doesn't really seem like, you just don't see a lot of guys have that just pop back up in their late 29s and 30s. Not to say he can't figure out a different way to make it work, at least to like some extent, but I'm not really expecting to see him coming out throwing 92 at this point.
Yeah, that would obviously be a welcome surprise if that does happen. It just remains so confusing to me because there's not a public injury. He never went on the IL with anything. He never got surgery. It just all of a sudden disappeared. I don't know if it was mechanical, if he is battling something that just hasn't come out. It just remains really weird to me. Following up Ober today was Taylor Rogers. He got success, got Ober out of the 7th inning. But then we saw Andrew Morris. It was the 8th inning. We saw Morris in his MLB debut pitch 3 innings. This time they go to him in a much higher leverage spot. Didn't get the job done, blew the save. The bullpen as a whole allowed 9 runs in this series and 8.2 innings pitched. And they allowed none in the opening series, so the opening game of the series. So that's in the last 2 games, they allowed 9 runs. What were your thoughts on the usage of Morris here? And do you think we kind of see him revert back to that long man role, maybe even get sent back down to AAA to resume throwing as a starter with a normal starter workload? Because they do need him stretched out. Zebby's been really bad. Rojas is kind of in a similar situation to Morris, where you don't really know how good he's going to be if you have to call him up. And Festa's obviously still on the injured list.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they did send Morris down after this one, only because, I don't know, he's kind of on that starting pitcher's schedule still. You're probably not going to ask him to pitch for at least a few days, he racked up the pitches. I knew like right away in that first inning, I think he threw like 28 or 29 pitches. He like just couldn't finish hitters. And I just kind of was surprised when they sent him back out for the second inning, only because like it was such like a labored inning. And just with all that combined, the number of pitches and stuff that he threw I don't even think he threw 2 full innings, but I can see them sending him down. I don't know who they call up for him, but I agree. Yeah, it probably is a good idea to keep him stretched out and have him make a start or a bulk appearance in 5 days. I just don't know that the Twins are going to carry him for that length of time. Given how bad the bullpen's been, it might be time to just get a look at someone else.
Yeah, it is worth noting the Twins have 13 games in 13 days after the off day tomorrow. So they will have a stretch here where if they want to insert a spot starter, he could make sense. I believe he threw 45 pitches today, so maybe he's down for the next 2 or 3 days, and then the last day of the Mets series, he's available again. I wanted to get your thoughts on the usage of Morris in that second inning. Like you mentioned, he threw a ton of pitches in the first inning. I believe it was the 8th. He got out of it unscathed, but he wasn't necessarily effective. Do you think they went back to him in the 9th because Shelton and Mackey thought he was the best option in the 9th? Or do you think they kind of had their hands tied, like, oh, he's already in the game, so we need to keep its pitch count built up? Obviously, the other guys that were available, Sands was down, Funderburk was down, Topo was down. They all pitched back to back to back. So it was going to be either Morris, Garrett Acton, or Anthony Bonda. None of those options are real good. So do you think it was their hands tied, or do you think it was they felt like Morris gave them the best chance to win?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an Acton believer to some extent, but I think it's definitely possible that they saw him as just the best option for that second inning today. That being said, we did see them do some weird stuff with Mick Abel in his first piggyback start, where they essentially just let him stay in and keep throwing pitches while the game kind of slipped away. So I don't know. It seemed like in the Abel situation that it was almost like we got to just let this guy get his work in, come hell or high water, whatever. They just kind of didn't care what the actual results were going to be. It's possible with today that they just kind of did the same thing. I don't know. There's just been some weird instances like that make me think, okay, maybe they did think he was the best option today, but it's also possible it was just some weird plan that they had for him to throw so many pitches, or who knows.
Yeah, that's the problem with having a long man that you like actually care about their future. Not that they don't care about everyone on the roster, but if you have a Randy Dobnak type or even a Garrett Acton, like you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into, he needs to get 50 pitches. You have him throw that long first inning and then you take him out because the game is close. With Morris, they're concerned about developing as a prospect still, as they should, but here it costs them the game. The other thing that cost them games throughout this series was runner in scoring position hitting. It finally normalized or regressed a little bit. They were just 6 for 35 this series. Obviously, we talked about Keaschall's poor at-bats. Buxton also struggled with guys in scoring position, as did the team as a whole. Are you worried about that, or do you just think that was, regressing to the mean a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it'll probably come and go, but, like I talked about, like to start the year, I think they not only like led the league in opportunities with bases loaded, but they were like second or third in OPS in those situations, at least at one point. I think those were just, streaks in baseball. It can definitely come and go, and everyone was like, oh, this is cool. I don't really know how it's happening, but we're having fun. And I think that's the way you have to look at it, because now this is kind of the other end of it. Maybe they settle in between, but they're just going to have to be better with the defense and the bullpen. So hopefully they can at least be like slightly above average in those situations, instead of streaks of being unbelievable and then streaks of just not getting it done.
Yeah, the other thing that made the runner in scoring position struggle stand out is that neither team in this series hit a home run. I don't know if you caught the stat. They were talking about it on the broadcast. This was the first series in I don't know how many years. I don't remember exactly what they said, that neither team hit a homer. Did you catch that stat, or are you like me and it kind of went in one ear out the other?
Yeah, I think I saw it actually on Twitter or X or whatever. Yeah, that was pretty surprising. And I was like trying to think back, because I could have sworn I saw somebody hit one, but yeah, it was just a weird series. Nobody really got a hold of anything, and um, just kind of a lot of messy defense leading to runs more than anything, it felt like.
Yeah, the defense was really, really bad. Lee had 2 errors or misplays on Saturday that cost them the game, and then Tristan Gray in extra innings at third base. He had one, and then Austin Martin, I think they also gave an error because he struggled picking up the ball. That allowed Ellie De La Cruz to round third base and score. Eventually, the inning snowballed into 3 runs. Obviously, the Twins didn't score in the bottom of the 10th, so it didn't matter. Some other notes from this series: Ryan Kreidler started in center field yesterday with the day off for Buxton. Derek Shelton was ejected after an Ellie De La Cruz check swing appeal. I don't know if you saw that play. It looked like the umpire got it right. I thought that he didn't swing. Shelton was really, yelling at him. You could hear from the dugout. It was a great hot mic moment. He was arguing that he didn't say anything. He most certainly was. That's the second time Shelton's been ejected this season. He's a guy that in Pittsburgh didn't get ejected a lot, so it is interesting, probably just random sample, that he's been ejected twice. And the Twins continued their first inning success. They are second in baseball in first inning runs. They have 18 on the season. That's just behind the Washington Nationals. Now we'll head to a break. After the break, we'll give our series takeaways, look at the minor league player of the week, and preview the upcoming Mets series. Stick with us. And welcome back into Twins Take. Still here with Cody Pirkl breaking down the series sweep at the hands of the Cincinnati Reds. Now we'll get into our series takeaway. Mine is that bad defense and a bullpen that struggles to get strikeouts is going to lead to a lot, and I mean a lot of close losses. And then I'll share Twins insiders here. His is that he thought Shelton managed this bullpen really poorly this series. He wasn't a fan of going to Cody Funderburk yesterday. They brought him in to face the lefty when the guy that was in was pitching just fine. And then today he thought that Garrett Acton should have been brought in sooner. He wasn't even warming up after a shaky first inning from Andrew Morris. And then obviously the 9th inning was pretty bad. They didn't get him in there until the game was already lost. Cody, do you have a takeaway here on this series?
Yeah, I just think Luke Keaschall's got to be the guy that they want him to be. I just don't think the Tristan Grays and guys like that are going to be, as we've already seen, having big days all year, so it's time for Luke Keaschall to come around.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. The other guy that I would throw into that is Byron Buxton. We did see him heat up earlier in the week against Boston, but he was back to being pretty shaky here in the last few games of the Red Series. So they need at least one of those guys, if not both, to get going here and be consistent if they want to put together another good stretch of games here. Now we'll get into the minor league player of the week. This week we have infielder Ben Ross. He's at Wichita. He was 8 for 16 this week, hit 4 home runs, 6 RBIs, walked 5 times, stole 3 bases. He was a 5th-round pick in 2022. He does have a minor league OPS of just 719, and he's not a top 30 prospect. But when he was drafted, he was a guy that he was drafted out of high school, I believe. He was a guy that I thought was maybe going to be a pretty good prospect. And who knows, maybe we'll see him in the majors at some point. I think he's already 24, 25 years old. So he is kind of trending towards just being a minor league filler player. Do you have any thoughts on Ben Ross, Cody?
Yeah, no, I just I think he's a super versatile guy. Plays kind of all over the place, and like you said, stealing some bases, hitting some homers. If he can put together, any portion of that skill set, I think he could, at some point in the future be, a up and down guy, a bench option. He could definitely find a role for himself with kind of the width of his skill set.
Yeah, and now we'll take a look around the AL Central. The Chicago White Sox took a series in Sacramento over the Athletics 2-1. They head to Arizona for a 3-game set. Murakami is up to 7 home runs now. That's 4th in the majors, tied with a few guys like Brandon Lau. He's off to just a really, really good start. When he came over, were you kind of concerned about him? There was obviously those numbers against velocity people were concerned about. Did you fall into that camp, or are you kind of expecting this hot start that he's had for the White Sox?
Yeah, I wasn't really wasn't expecting too much from him, to be honest. I don't know. Sometimes there's a pretty long adjustment period for guys that come over, especially hitters, where it's just a totally different environment and everything. But I don't know. Just his profile, I feel like there are going to be some stretches where people get really frustrated with him. There is still a lot of swing and miss to him. He's hitting the homers and everything like that, but I think if he goes on a dry spell for a while, people are going to start getting pretty fed up in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm curious if the White Sox are bad like we expect and Murakami is good for the first half of the season if he does get traded at the deadline. I believe the contract he signed is a short-term deal. In other news around the Central, Cleveland took 3 games in Baltimore. They did lose 1. That was a 4-game set. They have 3 with Houston coming up at home. Parker Messick carried a no-hit bid into the 9th. The season ERA is now 1.05, so he's off to a really good start. He's a young left-hander. And then Detroit is 1-1 against Boston. They're playing right now, and then they play tomorrow early morning for Patriots Day. Then they return home for to face Milwaukee. Zach McKinstry was placed on the 10-day IL. He's obviously a utility player for them. Sees quite a few at-bats. And then Kansas City just off to a dreadful start here. They were swept by the Yankees. They returned back to Missouri to face Baltimore. They've lost 7 in a row. I don't know where you stood on the Royals coming into the year. I thought they were going to be pretty good, and I still think they'll be decent. But do you think this is just maybe a bad team?
Yeah, I think they definitely could be. There's some weird stuff with them. I think for like the longest time, Bobby Witt Jr. hadn't had an RBI. There's some like Salvador Perez drama going over there because he hasn't been off to a good start, and they're starting to like DH him and stuff like that, and saying he needs a mental break. And he's posting on social media that he doesn't need one. I don't know. There's some weird stuff going on in Kansas City, but I didn't expect them to win the division or anything, or probably even make the playoffs. So, I don't know. I guess it's not too surprising that they have a stretch like this, and then it really buries them since it's at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, we've seen in past seasons, obviously under Rocco, what poor starts can do. Even if you put together a stretch where you play good baseball for a few months, you're just in such a deep hole that it's almost impossible to dig out of. Now we'll get into the Mets series. Speaking of a team that's playing really bad baseball to start out the year, they're on an 11-game losing streak. They have the fewest runs scored in the MLB with just 71 at 82 WRC plus. That's 27th. Their lineup strikes out 21.4% of the time. That's 20th. Their pitching is a little bit better. They have a 4.22 ERA. That's 20th. The underlying metrics on that are much better, 3.87. That's 11th in the league. And their bullpen is bang average with a .22 WPA. That's 15th in the league. Juan Soto, obviously a big loss for them. He has a calf injury. And then old friend Jorge Polanco just landed on the IL amongst some other pitchers like Tyler McGill and AJ Minter. So the Mets are really, really struggling here as the Twins head to New York to face them.
Yeah, I have a conspiracy theory that the Mets are a plant to keep the league from putting a salary cap in place. They're just going to point to the 2026 Mets and be like, see, it doesn't matter how much you spend. Like, it's unbelievable how bad they've been. Like, my understanding is they pretty much just chose the wrong guys, letting Pete Alonso go and signing Bo Bichette, trading Brandon Nimmo for Marcus Semien. And like pretty much everything they've done is just blown up in their face. It's incredible. I think they have a $500 million budget over there, and they're just not good.
Yeah, the LOL Mets will never, ever die, it seems. Hopefully this isn't a get-right series for them. I am a little concerned about that. I was hoping they would beat the Cubs today just so they weren't coming in on this big losing streak. In game one here, this is a 6-10 first pitch. Mick Abel, he's 1-2, 3.98 ERA on the season against young starter Nolan McLean. He's 1-1, 2.28 ERA, so 2 good young righties going in this one. The Twins will face 3 right-handed pitchers this series. Do you think Austin Martin will get a start in one of those? We saw him on the bench today. James Outman got the start even after Matt Wallner was benched. Obviously, Martin came through with the big hit in the 9th inning to tie the game up, but he was inserted as a pinch runner, so that wasn't even as a hitter to initially get him into the game.
Yeah, I really wish he could play some infield, like just anywhere, but I think they should really try to get him in, because it's not even just a matter of like, oh, he's getting on base, this and that. He's like a legitimately good defender in the outfield, especially when you put him next to Wallner or Larnach. And I think he's like really showing signs that he needs some extra looks against right-handed pitching to just see if he's just like a really good defensive left fielder who can just play every day. Maybe he's not always hitting second, but he was that guy as a prospect. He could be, an everyday player for like a solid team. He has enough of a skill set to do that. So I think it's time for them to start like just kind of making sure he's regularly in there. It's going to take some interesting like moving around, but I think they got to figure out a way.
Yeah, Trevor Larnach getting off to such a good start probably puts a little bit of a wrench in this plan because you want Larnach in the lineup against a righty the way he's swinging right now. Obviously, Wallner, as long as he's healthy, they're going to continue to play him against right-handed pitchers. I think the move you're looking at is Cody Clemens maybe just being a bench player, and then you play Bell at first base, and then you DH either Larnach or Wallner. That's how you get Martin in. I think we'll probably see him at least once this series. Obviously, he's not going to keep getting on at, a 500 clip all season long, but while he's hot, they got to ride him, especially the lineup isn't hitting enough as a whole. So I think we'll see him at least once. Game 2, another 6-10 first pitch. Simeon Wood Richardson gets the ball. He's 0-3, 6.10 ERA against Clay Holmes. He's 2-2, a 1.96 ERA. What are your general thoughts on SWR? I know we talked last episode. Twins Insider and Falvey's Mattress both thought that, his back's kind of against the wall here and he needs to have a good outing either now or within the next few starts or he's at risk of being dropped from the rotation. Do you share those views or do you think that they'll let him ride this, tough stretch out here?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that anyone's like pushing super hard for a call up. Like Prelip's been pretty good his last few starts. I guess they could just move things around with the roster they have with Andrew Morris, but I don't know. It's just, I don't know what you do with Simeon Woods Richardson if he's not at the back end of your rotation. He's got like, especially with the splitter, he's got a pitch mix that in theory you'd hope he could put up like a 4.5, 5 ERA as your number 5 starter, but he just doesn't have the stuff. He, for some reason, like his last start, he goes on stretches where it's like, he'll have an at bat where it's like, oh, he can do this. And then the next guy he walks on 4 pitches. He's just been so inconsistent and he's had good stretches and then he follows them up with bad ones. They're going to get fed up at some point with that. I just don't know. He doesn't strike me as a future bullpen guy. And I don't know that they're going to be super quick to rush up like a Connor Prelip or somebody like that and just leave him in the rotation. About the time you do that, somebody else gets injured. So I don't know. It's been disappointing to watch Simeon Woods Richardson this year.
Yeah, I was pretty high on him coming into the year after his good September last year. I've heard people, like you said, mention that they don't necessarily think he'll be a good reliever. I somewhat disagree with that just because his numbers first time through the order are so good. He's really good the first time through. In his velo, while it's not, he's not throwing 96, 97, he can get it up to 94 where maybe if you put him, say you're going to go out there and throw 25 pitches max, maybe he can run it up to 96 in a shorter start. So I think even if starting doesn't work out, which, look, let's be real, the odds that he's a starter, 2 years from now probably aren't real high. I think there's a chance he could be a decent reliever. In the series finale, Joe Ryan gets the ball, another late start here, 6-10, so not the traditional afternoon getaway day game. Get Joe Ryan on the bump, 2-2, 3.29 ERA against right-handed pitcher Kodai Senga. He's off to a really tough start, 0-3, 8.83 ERA. Senga's walking over 5 guys per 9 innings, allowing 2.1 home runs per 9. This is a guy the Twins just have to crush.
Yeah, he's got the ghost fork, but yeah, like you said, just kind of walking the house. They're going to have to go in with a game plan built around that to take the walks if he's going to give it to him and sit on the pitches that he leaves over the plate because he's been doing plenty of that too. So hopefully somebody that they can put up a crooked number against.
Yeah, it will be good to get a stretch here where they finally see a stretch. I think it might be the first time all season that they'll see 3 right-handers in a row. So you'll see Trevor Larnach, you'll see Matt Wallner, you'll see probably Cody Clemens in the lineup every day. It's got to be tough for those guys to get any sort of consistency just with, Larnach and Clemens are on the bench 2 of every 3 days and Wallner's getting fed to lefties. So I'm curious to see what they'll look like as they get into a little bit of a rhythm here.
Yeah, I'm most curious to see Wallner. He just has not really looked competitive at the plate against either side so far. He hasn't, like you said, like settled in against righties, but I think he's striking out close to half the time against them even. So it's not even like it's just lefties eating him, but Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long we're gonna hold on to the Cody Clemens everyday thing. Like, I know he's versatile in theory, but I don't know. It's like we talked about getting Austin Martin in the lineup, things like that. They're gonna have to start prioritizing at some point.
Yeah, it seems like Shelton has already lost a little bit of faith in him. He obviously started the year hitting leadoff. Now he's down to hitting, fifth or sixth in the order. It seems like if he's bad here for another 2 or 3 weeks, maybe they'll reach the end of the line with him. I don't think he has options. I don't know if if that's 100% factual or not. I imagine, he's 30 years old. It's tough to think that he has options.
No, I don't believe he does. I think he's going to have to be either traded or put on the waiver wire, which I'm sure someone would grab him, but I don't think the Twins are particularly close to parting with him either. I think they'd put him on the bench for their lefty hitter stash before they would expose him to waivers.
Yeah, I am curious with Zoll. We saw Falvey very rarely DFA a hitter. Obviously, pitchers he DFA'd a little bit more often just because you have to play the carousel with them. But hitters, I can't remember. We had Joey Gallo a few years ago. They just, essentially made up an injury rather than DFA him. I don't know, is Zoll going to be any different with that? If a guy's bad, are they going to go? Eric Wagaman's a guy who has, a 500 OPS at AAA and not much of a feature with the Twins. Are they just going to hang on to him in the name of depth, or will they finally be okay, trying to improve around the margins of the team?
Yeah, the thing I'll say about that, I was pretty surprised in spring training when they let go of Liam Hendricks and I don't know. They had a few of those veteran type guys. I was pretty surprised when they let go of those guys. I think the Twins of old probably would have held on to them in the name of depth because they could have, they could have stashed, Funderburk and guys like that in AAA and held on to as many of those old guys as possible and let them stick on the roster until June. So I would hope that they're a little more open to churning the roster with just kind of the new Zoll that's in charge. Hopefully that was a Falvey thing because I think they are going to have to start swapping things up here if this team kind of keeps going in the direction they look to be headed in this weekend.
Yeah, I think it was Chafin and Liam Hendricks who were both on minor league deals. We certainly all thought, I don't know about you, but everybody on this podcast thought Hendricks was not only going to be on the roster, we thought he was probably going to get the first chance at saving games. I don't believe either him or Chafin have been signed, so maybe they're obviously internal data, just across the league, show that they're really bad pitchers and teams don't have much faith in him. Regardless, Cody, thanks for joining us. Why don't you tell the audience where they can find you, find your writing, see your thoughts on social media?
Yeah, I'm just at Cody Pirkl on Twitter, X. I'm also writing for Twins Daily, usually once a week. Yeah, I don't rage post as much as I used to, but when I do, it's entertaining. So you can give me a follow over there, and yeah. But no, I appreciate you letting me come on. It's the collab nobody asked for.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I think this is a really good episode. It's always good to get differing opinions on this podcast to share with the audience. We'll be back on Friday to recap the Mets series. Please like and subscribe this wherever you're listening, as it helps the channel grow. You can follow us on Twitter at Twins Takes Pods. We've been posting all full episodes there as well as shorts when a roster move happens. We'll have one up Tuesday, hopefully, when the Royce Lewis move is made official. We'll see who they send out for that. For Cody, I'm Twin Central. This is Twins Takes. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye-bye.